The Atlanta Braves fired 3 assistant coaches yesterday, including hitting coach Kevin Seitzer. Why and what happens next? We'll tell you on this episode of Braves Today. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Friday, October 11th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter at Braves_today. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. You can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack. And today was supposed to be a shortstop show. I've been plugging it all week. We were going to talk about how to upgrade from Orlando Arcia, and then Monday was going to be a catcher show. We're going to talk about the issues with Sean Murphy, Travis d'Arnaud, what to do with Drake Baldwin. We're going to push each of those back. Shortstop show probably on Monday, catcher show on Tuesday, because we got news late in the afternoon yesterday. The 3 BBWAA beat writers for the team, Justin Toscano of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, David O'Brien of The Athletic, and Mark Bowman of MLB.com all tweeted at the exact same time the news that the Atlanta Braves fired 3 assistant coaches. Hitting coach Kevin Seitzer, assistant hitting coach Bobby Magallanes, and catching coach Sal Fasano. It was a little bit surprising. Each of these guys was under contract for 1 more season, so you did not have to move on from them. And O'Brien classified it as a firing. The other 2, I think, said they were moving on. They wouldn't be retained. In my mind, if you have time left on your contract and they are not bringing you back, you were fired. But I want to get into why this happened, what could be changing because of it, and what the outlook is from here. And the first thing I think I want to address on this, it came up a lot yesterday, is some of the conversation immediately after the firing happened was that Alex Anthopoulos and Troy Snitker had said last Friday in the press conference the coaching staff was being retained. And I went back to pull the audio because I wanted to see exactly what they said. I wanted to figure out exactly how decisive they were about this. I don't ever think they'd announce a firing in that. And I do want to point out that Anthopoulos had said at a different time in the press conference that they had yet to do their end-of-year evaluations because it was 2 days after being eliminated by the Padres. But here is what Anthopoulos and Snitker said about the situation. The questions that you hear being asked, those are being asked by David O'Brien of The Athletic.
Do you intend to, do you want to bring back your entire staff as it is?
Yes, as of right now, yes.
Alex, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Smith's staff. So I'm on board with him.
Are they all under contract, or will they be getting the contract soon? I'm not sure.
I mean, we never get into that, but I mean, they, barring someone retiring or resigning,
right.
We've never gotten into the contractual stuff with them, but yeah, like Sid said, the expectation is they're all.
So the 2 things that stood out to me there is the first time Snit answered, he said, as of now, yes. And again, they had not done their end-of-year evaluations from that point. And then at the end, Anthopoulos, and I don't know why it faded the audio out at the end. At the end, he said, the expectation is that they will be back. And I think it's clear after they sat down and did their end-of-year work, looking at the body of work from the season, looking at the input the coaches had, feedback from the players and everything, they decided that they wanted to move on. Sal Fasano one, that's really interesting. He, as the catching coach, Atlanta did not have that position before Sal Fasano. They created that position for Sal Fasano. They are not going to fill that position. That's something he worked solely with the catchers. He helped with not only their defensive work, their game planning work. We'll get more into that on Tuesday's episode when we talk about the catchers. But the hitting coach thing is really interesting to me. I did a show this week talking about the offensive strategy of the Braves was sound. It just didn't work as well this year as last year. I got a little bit of feedback on that, a little bit of pushback from you guys. And I have to say, all of the comments on YouTube were very respectful. And thank you for that. I do appreciate that. I do think two things can be true at once. The overall concept of it is more reliable to get hard contact and get an extra base hit or a home run versus trying to string together consecutive hits to bring in a runner. That concept is sound. The statistics bear out. I'm going to show you a chart real quick. Hitting the ball hard matters, okay? So those of you in audio, my apologies. This is the stats for last year. We don't have 2024's complete numbers yet. But in 2023, hard hit batted balls produced a batting average across the league of 506 and a slugging percentage of 1.08, okay? And that, again, hard hit ball is 95 miles an hour or harder. Batted balls below 95 miles an hour had a batting average of 221 and a 261 slugging percentage, okay? So again, hitting the ball hard matters. And Atlanta's insistence on making hard hit contact, I think, is still a sound strategy. But it's very obvious, and I think you'll also agree. And a lot of the comments that I got on that show agreed that it can't be an all or nothing anymore. Atlanta was, at the sake of anything else, it felt like, just trying to go for hard hit contact as hard as you can every single time. And that is what needs to change. And so I'm really curious to see when the new hire comes around, because this is a very appealing job. We have a lot of long-term guys here. It'll be interesting to see exactly what the tweaked approach is going forward. But when you look at the Seitzer firing, he was the MLB Coach of the Year from Baseball America last season for what this offense did. And it was really surprising to hear that he was let go until I read the interview that David O'Brien of The Athletic had with Kevin Seitzer yesterday. He got him on the phone. This is one of those few times when the everyday beat writer kind of thing, they came through in the clutch. He got Kevin Seitzer on the phone and on the record discussed with him the firing. And zero ill will towards the organization, towards Alex Anthopoulos, towards Brian Snitker, none of that. Seitzer said, quote, "It was a tough year this year. I don't blame Alex. I don't blame him for a second. But I couldn't be more thankful to Alex and the Braves for having me around this long." But the big takeaway for me, and the thing that explains why you made this decision, or why Atlanta made this decision, was at the end of the article. And I'm going to read you the quote here exactly. "It was the hardest season of my life because guys were trying so hard and couldn't get going, and I couldn't get them to not press. If they can find somebody to get these guys to not try so hard, that needs to be the guy they hire. You can talk about mechanics until the cows come home, but this was all between the ears." This ties into our comments about the injuries impacting this squad and how all of these offensive players were just trying so hard to do it themselves because they didn't have the belief or the faith that the other replacement level players would be able to do it, or they felt the pressure of, hey, I'm the guy with the big contract. I'm one of the only ones left standing right now. I've got to drive this in. I've got to get these runs in. And so the Braves players were trying just way too hard, right? They were trying to get that big hit, that big home run every single at bat. Some players are just wired like that. Sean Murphy has never taken a half swing in his life. I've watched him at batting practice, and he is doing G-hacks in batting practice. He is never taking a mild swing. He may not ever do that in his life. But so many of these players, and this gets back to the situational thing, so many of these players were not able to produce in some of these situations and runners in scoring position with a guy on third and less than 2 outs and all of that stuff because they were trying to do it all themselves. They were trying to get all of the runs in at once versus getting a run in. This team with runners in scoring position actually hit better than I thought they did. 247 batting average with a 727 OPS with runners in scoring position. The overall stats were a 243 batting average. So they actually did better than I thought with runners in scoring position, but it felt like a lot of that was very much certain players were just really good instead of the entire team. And I think that's one of the issues that I had there is it just really was not consistent across the team. We talked about how bad Orlando Arcia was in that situation. And I think the next coach that they bring in, I'll be curious to see what philosophy changes they bring with them, because this roster is built to slug, right? And I don't think bringing back all of these players like you are, next opening day, you're going to have, let's assume Ronald Acuna Jr. is back on opening day. We don't know. If he's back on opening day, you're probably going to have 7, 8 opening day starters be the same as they were last year. Like Jorge Soler is probably in left field over Jared Kelenic on opening day. You may have a different shortstop. Assuming Ronald Acuna Jr. is back in right field, center field's not different. Right field's not different. First base isn't different. Second base isn't different. Third base isn't different. One of those two catchers is back. The DH is not different. Marcell Ozuna's back. The only changes that you have is 1 or 2. And this is what the roster is built to do. It's really hard to make a wholesale philosophy change for these hitters when you're not changing the hitters. It's incredibly hard to do that. Now, can you tweak the approach? You absolutely can tweak the approach. And in just a second, I want to get into what I think is going to change in the approach, as well as a name you may see as the new hitting coach and a name you definitely won't see as the new hitting coach. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. You can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack. And talking about the firing of the coaches, we're sticking right now with the hitting coach. Again, I'll get to more of Sal Fasano and stuff on that Tuesday Catcher show. But I think you're not going to see a wholesale change in the offensive hitting philosophy of this team next year. Because you have so many players coming back, it is just incredibly hard to completely change what you do at the plate. And remember, that's a personnel group largely intact that had one of the greatest offensive seasons as a team in modern MLB history just last year. You've seen what happens when it works and you get the 90th percentile outcome. This year, we also saw what happens when you have a ton of injuries, slumps, the league adjusts, and you have a 10th percentile outcome. And I do think that some of the reason you moved on from Kevin Seitzer is how long it took the team to adjust to what the league was doing. We talked about this a few times now, about how Atlanta hit strikes hard. And when you get a lot of low fastballs versus versus elevated fastballs, and then breaking pitches that drop below those fastballs, it's a lot harder. It takes you longer to make your swing decision, right? To pull the trigger or not pull the trigger, and then to adjust during your swing to the ball dropping out of the zone. You saw some of these guys adjust to that. Matt Olson had a great last third of the season, and it was because he was finally able to make that adjustment. But arguably, it shouldn't have taken him 2/3 of the season to do it. So I do think that some of the reason Kevin Seitzer ended up being fired. And again, this is all speculation. We don't know from the team. They've not officially announced these. The beat broke this news yesterday, which means they got a text message from somebody in the organization to the three of them at the same time, letting them know. I think part of the reason Seitzer was fired was the guys weren't really listening to him last year because they were all trying to do too much. And he didn't do either an aggressive enough job, wasn't quick enough, or wasn't effective enough at getting them to change what they were doing to account for how the league changed how it attacked Atlanta. Again, you saw late in the year, Matt Olson was going. Michael Harris, when he finally got back and was healthy, he got going, especially in the postseason. They made adjustments, but not soon enough. I do also think the comments from Chipper Jones played some sort of role. Now, obviously, we don't know how much. We don't know if that's the biggest thing that they looked at and thought about when they made the decision. We don't know if that was a small part of it. But it's hard for me to think your Hall of Fame third baseman who played for nobody else but you and has worked as a hitting instructor in previous seasons, a roving instructor, a part-time instructor who has not worked with the team in 2 seasons and expressed frustration publicly about the approach that the team has, that didn't play a factor. It's just, you're never going to convince me that Chipper Jones coming out publicly and saying what he said did not have a factor in this decision. That being said, I have seen people, lots of people, on Facebook, on Twitter, everywhere else, asking the team to hire Chipper Jones as the hitting instructor. That is not going to happen. Chipper Jones is not going to be the next hitting coach of the Atlanta Braves. When he was working with the team, he was very clear. He has a lot going on with his family outside of baseball. He didn't he didn't want to travel with the team. He didn't want to go on the away games. He wasn't always available to come to the homestands. Yeah, and I don't remember if it was Mark Bowman or David O'Brien. One of them made the joke on Twitter last night. The only way you would get Chipper to agree to be the hitting coach would be if it was a 50-game season, all at home, and the games weren't on the weekends. Chipper Jones is not going to be the next hitting coach of the Atlanta Braves. I don't know who is going to be the next hitting coach of the Atlanta Braves. It's going to be a very popular job because you have a former MVP in Ronald Acuna Jr. You have MVP finalists in Matt Olson and Austin Riley. You have a young budding superstar, in my opinion, in Michael Harris II. You have a lot of talent to coach, unlike a lot of other teams. I personally, this is all speculation. I have no inside sources on this. There's a big belief that Brian Snitker is on his last season or last couple seasons before retirement. I wonder if Troy Snitker, his son, who's been working as a hitting coach in Houston, I wonder if Troy Snitker joins the organization to have the chance to work with his dad before his dad retires. I honestly think that could be a move that is made. I don't know. Maybe he decides to be the assistant hitting coach versus the primary hitting coach. I don't know. But I feel like that is a realistic possibility because, one, so much of this game is based on relationships, right? And who you know, and legacy and bloodlines and all of that. And so that's something to watch for. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it happens, I want you guys to come back and clip this and say, hey, Lindsay called it. What I would expect from that new hitting coach, whoever it is, Troy Snitker or somebody else, what I would expect, though, is a change in approach by this team. Maybe not a wholesale change. They're still going to prioritize power. They're still going to prioritize hitting the ball hard, being aggressive in the zone at strikes. But I do think there is room to have a secondary approach, an A swing and a B swing. Not a lot of these Braves hitters, when you look at the bat tracking, when you look at the situational metrics, not a lot of these hitters have a secondary approach. And so I can see we're going to continue to reinforce the A swing as much as possible with our guys. You are trying to do damage on pitches in the zone and launch these balls. But in certain situations, a runner on third and less than 2 outs, runners in scoring position, a close game in the ninth, etc., we want you to have a B swing. And that B swing is going to be what everybody's been at, what Chipper Jones talked about. You're going to choke up a little bit. You're looking to make quality contact, drive the ball in a gap, just get a ball in play, make the defense make a play, advance a runner, do what you have to do. I don't think Atlanta's suddenly going to start sack bunting every game. They don't like to sack bunt. You saw them start to call some bunts late in the year for some of these guys, for your Gio Urshela's, for your Whit Merrifields, for your Eli Whites. They started to call bunts later in the year for some of these replacement players that weren't as good as your starters. I don't think it's going to be a wholesale thing for everybody. You're not going to see Matt Olson ever lay a bunt. But I do think you will see, with whoever the new hitting coach is, you will see Atlanta start to prioritize situationally pulling back from the all or nothing swings and having a lower ceiling but higher floor approach where we're trying to consistently put balls in play. We're trying to stress the defense. We're trying to keep the inning going versus ending the inning with a home run or a strikeout. Again, it makes a lot of sense. That's something, when I did the approach show earlier this week, a lot of people were saying they need to do this. They need to do this in those close situations. And the fact that we didn't really see a lot of the guys in Atlanta do that this year, I think is the primary reason why you saw Kevin Seitzer let go, right? He was the longest tenured hitting coach in baseball. He's been here longer than Troy Snitker was manager. He was Freddie Gonzalez's hitting coach, right? He had 10 years in Atlanta as the hitting coach. I think it was his third or fourth job. And he doesn't know. He said in the article with David O'Brien, he doesn't know if he's going to retire or not. He has to take some time to think about it. That's fine. He has a contract through 2025. He'll get paid either way. Those guys get paid if they get fired early, they get paid through those contracts. But I do see Atlanta getting their next hitting coach to establish secondary approaches with a lot of these guys where they're just settling for getting balls in play and keeping the inning going and making the opposing defense make a play versus always trying to get home runs. And again, credit to you guys. The YouTube comments on that approach show this week, that's what you guys were asking for. You guys said, we got to do this. That's the problem, is they haven't been doing this. Chipper Jones said, that's the problem. They haven't been doing this. Atlanta, it appears, agreed with you guys and agreed with Chipper Jones and said Kevin Seitzer, for all of the goodwill he should have from that amazing offense in 2023, he wasn't the guy to teach that secondary approach. So we're going to go find somebody else to do it. I'm pretty confident there's 15 teams right now that would hire Kevin Seitzer. I'm pretty confident there's at least 15 or 20 established hitting coaches in Major League Baseball that would leave their current teams to come to Atlanta and be the hitting coach. At the end of the day, I don't really think the hitting coach is the main factor in the success of the offense. They can fix guys. We saw what they did when they lowered Michael Harris's hands, right? They can help underperforming guys unlock something. We saw what they did with Ramon Laureano. We saw what they did with Gio Urshela. He wasn't awful when he got to Atlanta. We saw what they did with Whit Merrifield, who started off terribly in Philly, got DFA'd. They paid him money to leave, and then he came here and was a Phillies killer here, right? It can help on the margins, but this is going to come down to the players. This is going to come down to your Matt Olsons, your Austin Rileys, your Ronald Acuna Jr.'s. These are the guys that are going to determine success or failure at the plate next year, not Kevin Seitzer, not whatever hitting coach replaces Kevin Seitzer. Chipper Jones being the hitting coach would not have changed a lot of things this year. Again, maybe on the margins, maybe in certain situations, a tip he gave somebody, the urge to do something different, maybe that would have broken through. And it feels like Atlanta agrees that maybe a different voice, whether it is Troy Snitker or somebody else, maybe a different approach, a different voice is what these Atlanta Braves need to get back to where this offense should be. Again, sorry we didn't get to the shortstop episode. I wanted to talk about these coaches being fired. We're going to do the shortstop episode on Monday, talking about how to fix Orlando Arcia if it's possible, how to replace Orlando Arcia if it's possible, what options you have there, free agency, trades, all of that stuff. Tuesday looks like it's going to be the catcher show we're going to do on Monday, talking about Sean Murphy and Travis d'Arnaud and Drake Baldwin, talking about Sal Fasano leaving and how that changes things. We'll do all of that on Tuesday. In the meantime, if you're listening on YouTube, do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell when we drop the next episode. If you're on audio, leave us a 5-star review. Either way, tell your friends they can go get the Braves Today podcast because they're breaking down what happens with your Atlanta Braves on a daily basis in a way that I like to think is informative. And if nothing else, there's some really respectful conversation and debate going on in the comments. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.